I feel like, it's important for us to talk about our journeys on this podcast so that women can kind of relate and get inspiration and hope along their journey. And so that's been a lot about what my mission has been. And growing up, it wasn't always like this. As many girls were finding ourselves, I was a young girl born and brought up in Barbados. And my mom and dad had an arranged marriage. We're Hindu. We're Indians, and my mom and dad were both from India. They had an arranged marriage. My mom did not want to get married. And, my mom was forced into an arranged marriage where she was very unhappy. And she and my dad moved to Barbados before we were born. We were both born there in Barbados, so we knew nothing about India at that time. It was, we only knew a little bit about our culture and the language and, the food, of course, the Indian food. And the only thing I can remember from that part of my life is, there was some struggles. My parents really didn't get along. And my mom, being that she was a free spirit herself, believed that she was trapped in a marriage that she was forced into. And so she was unhappy. And it kind of spiraled through the years where we moved out several times and into new homes. I thought it was an adventure, but apparently it was just my mom's way of changing her life and, trying to find herself. And I didn't know anything about that at that time. I was just going with the flow with my mom and my sister at that time. And, believing that this is what marriage was and that, I didn't really know what a normal, happy marriage looked like. I didn't know what a happy family looked like. I was just going with whatever and wherever the wind blew us. And, we didn't have a lot of money. And I remember feeling very, confined in that space of I can't ask for my mom for anything. I just have to be independent and do things on my own. And that's kind of how my mentality started. But when I was 14, my mom and dad, they separated. My mom decided to leave the country and go back home to India. And at that time, again, I was going with the flow. I'm this is an adventure. I was so excited. I was on top of the world. And we got to India and my mood totally changed. And I was in shock. I did not like what I saw because I was used to living in a lap of luxury. I was living an entitled life in Barbados, even though I didn't feel like it was an entitled life. They say the grass is greener on the other side. So I said, oh, this is going to be an adventure. And when I got there were so many different elements that I couldn't get with and I couldn't feel like I was a part of. And I felt very isolated at that time. And I was going along with it because I was only 14 and I had to, adapt. How do you adapt to that life?
Too unsure.
Yeah. Huge culture shock because, as you know, in India, it's a third world country. There's a lot of poverty. Their way of dressing, living, talking, breathing, everything's different. So you're having to adapt to that. So from the moment I got there, I had no choice but to adapt to that lifestyle. I remember going to a school where, so I was taken out of my school at 14, being that I wanted to be a doctor at that time, because that was in my mind. Being in my culture, you were expected to have a career that made a lot of money, like a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. You see a lot of Indians around here that are, engineers or doctors or whatever, because the culture is so rigid on education, right? And so I was studying and I thought, okay, I'm going to be a doctor someday, but I was immediately pulled out of that life. So I couldn't continue what I was doing. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I got to start over now. So I'm in India and I'm in this school and it's backwards. I'm taking 20 steps backwards because I'm having to learn the language. I have to learn how to read, write, speak. I have to learn how to communicate with them and behave like them, how to be, a student in that environment. So I couldn't focus on the same things I was focusing on when I was 14. There's no way. I didn't have those same friends anymore. I had to make new friends. And I did. I made new friends. I started to walk the walk, talk the talk. Wasn't very good at talk the talk. And, people would laugh at me when I would speak Hindi. And they'd be like, no, you're definitely not Indian, right? And luckily I love Indian food. So that's all I ate. And that was amazing. But, I barely spoke to my dad during those 4 years. And I was there for 4 years of my life. But it was I told my mom, I said, Mom, when I'm 18, I'm moving back to Barbados. I said, there's no way I'm staying here. So for the 4 years of my life, I started to, they say when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I did that in India. I became Indian. I am Indian, but I became
like that culture, sure, everything.
Yeah. I embodied it. I identified as that. And I started to speak like that. My accent changed. My friends, I started to relate to people in that way and wearing clothes like they did. And, it was very different. And I remember I've told this to you so many times, but I remember feeling like, okay, I have to wait this out. This is 4 years of my life. I need to wait it out. What do I do in these 4 years of waiting this out? And I would walk to this church every week and I would sit there and I would light a candle. And I'm not Christian or Catholic or whatever, but I would walk there and I would feel peace. I would feel so much peace and calm. And I would just know everything's going to work out, Sherry. You just have to talk to the universe and tell the universe what you want and it will come to you. And I remember going there and saying, I want this husband. I want this, I want to be happy. That was the only thing on my mind. It was like, I just want to be happy. And as soon as I turned 18 was when I left. I went back home and I went to a world of, being around a father I barely knew. And I kind of, again, I had to adapt because I was no longer that person that I was at 14 and I wasn't in that environment. So as a child, you are molded very easily the younger you are, right? I went back to Barbados. I hung out with my friends that I had grown up with. And I remember them like bringing me a bag of clothes and saying, you need to change. Because I was wearing a Leonardo DiCaprio shirt that was lime green. And my best friend growing up was like, you need to change, girl. So I had to change. I had to adapt, right? So I started wearing the clothes they were wearing. I went to get a tattoo, which was like, whoa, beyond my wildest imagination. I'm like, whoa, you have a tattoo? Whoa, you have a belly ring? Whoa. And then I started to adapt to that mindset. So then I became that and I became a rebel, right? And my dad and I didn't have that relationship. So I felt like I could be a rebel with him because all those years I didn't feel like I connected with him. I felt like he hurt my mom. And so I had this thing against him, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. And I didn't care about his feelings, and I was 18. So I really didn't care. And I went out. I didn't have a job. So I got made minor jobs. I worked with my dad for a bit, went to retail, worked in little things here and there and no real structure, just kind of like enjoying life. Went to nightclubs till 5 a.m, promiscuous girl I was. And, I had fun and me and my best friend would come home at 5 a.m. and my dad would be like, Shady, you know what time it is? And I'd be like, I don't care. You know what I mean? This is my attitude. I had a real attitude. And, I'm not proud of it right now, but great night and day between who I am today and who I was then. Yeah. And I went through a lot of transition, right? So I give that girl grace. I look back and I say, you know what? You've been through a lot. You've adapted to everybody, everything. You had certain feelings of resentment towards your parents or for whatever reason. That's just the environment you were in. You're the product of your environment. Right. And so I really had to learn that I had to take control of my own life. And it was until I was 24 and I had this feeling like I need to get away from here. I had broken up with my boyfriend. I was like, you change yourself. You're like, I need to change, So I'm like, all right, my dad would spend money on me to go to school. He lived and breathed money and work and business. That's who he was. And I told him, I said, I want to go to Canada. I want to go study. I didn't know what I was studying. I just picked something because I had worked at the airport for a few years there in Barbados. So I said, well, the easiest thing for me to do is to go work, do study travel. So I took a course in travel and hospitality, moved to Canada by myself. My sister was living here at the time by herself. So we hung out in this 1-bedroom place in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And no couch, nothing, no money. To call my dad for money every 5 seconds. Walking to the grocery store, we had nothing. And cold. Friggin' I entered Canada and I remember thinking, this is home from the airplane, mind you. This is home. Snow, pretty, blah, blah. I get off the plane. I'm like, get me the fuck back on that plane. I was so cold. I was wearing flimsy shoes, no real jacket, nothing. I couldn't talk. Literally couldn't talk. My eyes were watering. I know.
Winter? So your first experience with
I came in December. In December from a country like Barbados to Canada. I'm like, the hell am I doing here? So
Girl still wears flip-flops in the winters here.
yeah, I've graduated to like backless, but my toes are covered now. No socks yet. We're getting there. It's so good weather. So I'm here in Canada, no friends, just my sister, but she ends up going back eventually. Made some friends here. You know, I remember thinking Canadians are really nice. I'm like, what the hell do they want from me? Like, you know, because I've been living in 3 different places and adapting to all of those people and the way they talk to people. And I'm like, Canadians are so friendly. Like, what do they want from me? Right. And I'm thinking like,
That's interesting. What do they want?
It's so interesting. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, they're too nice. Too nice.
Right.
Yeah. Too nice. And, you know, I went to school. I was hell bent on getting 100% and being like the top of my class. I was on a mission. I was like, I'm going to be the best, you know? So I studied, I made friends, but I also was valedictorian in this college. You know, I say college in quotation marks because I didn't really graduate. So I couldn't really get in a real college. I got in those like community colleges. And I'm so grateful for that because it allowed me to really find home here, you know? And I ended up meeting my husband on MySpace.
In MySpace was that okay?
As old as I am. MySpace was like a music channel, but it wasn't a dating site. There was no real dating sites back then. But you just met people. And like he was moving to where I was living and he was buying a house and we ended up, you know, dating and we got married. We moved in within 3 months of knowing each other because it just so happened that I had to move out of my apartment because my roommate was like moving out and I ended up moving in with him. And I'm pretty sure his parents thought we were not. We got married. And then what happened after that transpired into a series of universal, you know, callings and like nudges. And so I believe that what got me to Canada was a lot of universal nudges because from India on to Barbados to finding myself to finding where I need to go next, like listening to myself through those years. But then it got even better because when I moved here, you know, I found my husband that I had been wishing for all my life at that church that I had been praying for. You know, we ended up having 3 boys, beautiful boys. But during that time, I was thinking, what do I want to do in my career? And I didn't want to do travel anymore. So it's one of those things where you're in travel and you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm really good at it, but like I'm pregnant now. So I'm pregnant with my first child and I end up leaving that job. So during that time, I'm sitting idle. And my friend says to me, do you want to go do this cake class? And I said, sure, why not? So we go to this cake class and I'm these piping bags and I'm piping on a freaking rainbow on a buttercream cake. And I'm thinking, it looks like a basic buttercream cake, but like I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this. Right? I'm like, I need to do this. I just knew I needed to do it. And so I started learning everything to do with cakes. I could not bake a cake to save my life, but I loved the decorating part of it. So I went home. My baby was born. I started playing with cake baking and decorating, but the baking sucked. Like people would be like, it's burnt. Like it's disgusting. It's so bad. So I ended up because I was using box cake, trying to get away with that. But no, we can't do that, right? People know. So I'm like, all right, I learned everything I needed to learn and hours and days and weeks in the kitchen and my toddler's running around. He's like, mommy, here. I'm like, cake, here. His first word was cake, by the way. His first word was cake. So, okay, so I'm making these cakes. People are loving it. Okay, now I know how to bake a cake and I'm decorating the cake too. So it's a full package, right? People are loving this cake. They're coming over to my house and they're ordering cupcakes and cakes and making these fondant, like cool cakes. I mean, they're not that good looking now that I look at them because they were just starting, but I loved it. Right. And that's all I wanted to do. That was my passion. And somebody came to my door one day and said, hey, like you can't make cakes from your house anymore because the health inspectors are very strict on that, health regulations. And I said, okay, well, I don't care then. I'm going to open a bakery. So I turned to my husband and I said, I can't not do this. I said, I'm going to open a bakery. He's like, okay. So I ended up opening a bakery. It was so successful. People love the cakes and the cupcakes every day. It was called Piece of Cake. It was bright pink awning and it was like my dream. Beautiful. 7 years in, 7 years goes by and I'm thinking, oh, I'm not loving this anymore. What's wrong? And I'm asking universe, send me something else because I know there's something else for me and I just don't know what it is. I just don't know what it is. Little did I know that I kind of already knew because I had already been, you know, taking pictures of my cakes and my products. And I said, I love doing this because it makes the food look good. And I was never taking photographs of people until my sister-in-law had a baby. And I said, hey, I'll take a picture of your baby. Went over, took pictures, and I was like, I'm going to close my bakery to become a photographer. Like, crazy. I remember this. And I'm like, how do I leave this bakery to do this thing? So same thing I did with cakes, I did with photography, buried my head in studying what I needed to know about. And I ended up taking pictures of you. You were my model for a while, went out, got clients that were like $100 clients, you know, like cheaper rates just so I can get practice. And I remember calling you one day and saying, I'm closing the bakery and I'm going full time. And I did that.
I remember
I did that. And that was probably the best decision that I made at that time because it turned into a hugely successful wedding photography business with high-end clients that love and respect what I do and my talent. But why am I here right now? Well, I call it the 7-year itch.
The 7-year itch. Really though?
Every 7 years I go through an itch. If you all can look at your life and ask yourself the timeline of where you started feeling disconnected from something,
right?
There's usually like a pattern.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I have a 7-year pattern. And so 7 years into photography, I'm thinking, okay, there's something wrong here. I don't love it as much as I used to. Feeling like my identity is tied to this thing that I'm doing. I'm feeling like I'm doing it for other people now more than myself. So I'm falling out of alignment. So what do I do? Well, I go through a moment of ask myself the question, what is it that you really want now? What is the next step? You know, and how are you going to listen to that?
Right. Yeah.
So that's pretty much what happened. And this year I made the transition to announce that I am leaving wedding photography, and everyone was completely shocked at that because they were like, whoa, Sherry, you're like, you know, one of the best photographers around. Like, you're successful, you're good at it, you're talented, everybody's learning from you, or like you're giving us a gift. Like, why would you do that? Why would you quit? And I don't think of it as quitting because I hate the word quit because I'm not quitting. I am listening to myself and I'm following where I'm supposed to go next because I have learned what I needed to learn in that moment. That space that I was in was there for its purpose. The cake decorating space was there for its purpose. Living in India was there for its purpose. Moving to Canada was there for its purpose. It's big purposes. All of this I take and I learn from it, which leads me here. And I remember when I was leaving that career, you and I had the conversation where we were always talking about this in the background because we were on our separate journeys. And we had always brought up the conversation about, you know, what if we got together and did something? What if we got together and inspired women and did something for other women together? But we were in completely different spaces then. We couldn't do it then. But then it became a moment of clarity and divine timing where it was like, you know what? I'm ready for this. I'm ready to leave everything that I've done, but take what I've learned and apply it together with you. And together we're stronger because we have tried different coaching on our own. I became a photography coach as well. And I taught a lot of people and it was very, you know, it was very humbling. It was very rewarding and I loved doing it. But I was doing coaching from a space that didn't fit me anymore. This photography world wasn't fitting me.
Yeah.
But I love coaching women who want to develop, you know, better versions of themselves through their mindset and through their habits and beliefs and like giving that inspiration to women, not just photographers. And so like that part of me I took, but I applied it here with you when we started talking about Soul Sisters. And we're like, we need to do this now because we are in the right moment in time where we've learned everything we needed to learn to be able to start this. And it was scary because shifting your identity is not easy. Letting go of that old person, that belief, but it's not easy, but it almost feels like it was easy because I couldn't go back to it. Like I've told you this so many times, like I can't go back. There's no way. I still have another year to go, but it's only a few more weddings. But it was still like, I can't go back to that lifestyle. I can't go back to that way of thinking, that constant needing of validation for my work, for what I do, and tying myself to that thing, to that career. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling free when I announced it. But I also am scared because I'm not really 100% sure what my future looks like. But I just know and I trust. And the big part of my life has been trust. A big part of my life is taking those leaps of faith, trust and surrender, And what is meant for you will be for you if you follow it. If you listen to those callings, those deep yearnings for what it is that you want, not what others want, not because you're scared of disappointing others, and I've always felt like disappointing others was a fear of mine. So leaving the bakery was hard because I was like, I'm disappointing everybody who likes my stuff. I'm disappointing photography clients who will want me to shoot their wedding. No, it's not about them. They will find someone else to cover their, that purpose. I will not be. And honoring that part of us is the best gift we can give to ourselves and the best gift we can give to other people so that they can see how brave you are, how, strong and resilient you are so that they can be that way too. We do not need to follow societal standards. We do not need to be molded to fit a standard that has been fed to us our whole lives. I don't need to be a doctor. I can be whatever I want. And today, my calling is to inspire women, to help women to step into their own authenticity and listen and surrender to that calling of theirs. That's what I want to do. So thank you for listening to that.
Love this. So like giving like a clap. I think this is beautiful in your journey. Just hearing you speak it, it just goes to show how one event led to another, how it was a series of different chapters within your book that has prepared you and brought you to the next, right? And I love how you tie it all together and you say, the biggest lesson, overarching thing that you've learned from your journey is trust. Learning to trust, learning to surrender, and just knowing that everything always works out and that your life is divinely guided and you get to co-create it with the universe. And you're always protected. You're always safe. And to be open to adventure and what's around the corner, even if you can't see it, but being open to it. So thank you.
Thank you for listening.
And I know that our listeners definitely took a lot away from your story today, and we're really looking forward to sharing more with you on the next episode. So thank you, Soul Sister.
Thank you, Soul Sister,
for being here with us today, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Hey, Soul Sister, before you go, we want to share something with you. We believe that every woman has a story worth sharing and a voice worth hearing, and we'd love to hear yours. Share your personal breakthroughs, challenges, and journey with us by applying to be featured on our podcast, speaking events, or future publications. Want to join the movement? You can help us reach more women like you by leaving a review, subscribing, or sharing it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. You can catch us on all our socials and stay up to date on the fun to come. Remember, Soul Sister, together we rise.